Welcome to the AR Personal Finance Show. Personal Finance Show dedicated towards helping you navigate your way through the day-to-day finances. My name is Alan Rajabali and I'm currently a business student studying at the University of Victoria in Canada. I decided to make this channel to help out people figure out their way through finance as well as teach the things that I've learned in school regarding finance. I always try my best to keep up with the trends and follow along, as well as finding out ways to maximize the best way for my individual dollar, and I'm hoping I can do the same for you today. Let's hope I can teach you a thing or two today, and let's move on to the video. So before we get started, I just wanted everyone to know that by no means am I a personal financial advisor in any way. Everything expressed in this video are just simply my thoughts and opinions and should be taken as that way. If you're going to make any important life decisions based on this video, I highly suggest and recommend that you go talk to a personal financial advisor. Alright, so now that we got that all out of the way, let's reveal our first video, which is going to be budgeting. Now, we're going to start off pretty simple for this video, but in later videos we're probably going to get into more detail for this. All you need to know for today's video is that a budget is simply a personal tracking tool that can be used to track three things. Your income, which is the money that you earn, your expenses, the money that you spend from your income, and then your savings, which is the difference between what you earn, your income, and what you spend, your expenses. Alright, so you must actually be wondering, what actually is income? Now these are things that you can earn from a monthly income stream, like running a business, or your salary that you earn from your job at A&W. Or it can even be small things, like getting back money from a bottle depot drive, or also selling a video game and getting money from Craigslist. Let's move on to expenses. Now these are things that you buy. They can be anything small, like a Snickers bar from the dollar store, up to big purchases like a brand new iPhone 12. There are two key expenses you need to worry about. So there are necessities and personal. Now necessities are things like your food and your rent. These are things you truly can't live without. So we also have personal expenses. And unlike necessities, these are things that are nice to have in your life, but you really don't need them to function. They can be things like your Starbucks macchiato, or your Amazon Prime membership, or also the iPhone 12 you use to slide into those Tinder DMs.
Oh, I feel for my brother. Feel for my brother.
Alright, so for the last part of our budget, we have what's known as the savings. Now, I want you to picture a piggy bank. You have your piggy bank here, and you have your monthly income right here. The monthly income fills up the piggy bank. Now, as time goes on throughout the month, you definitely have some expenses. So it can be things like your rent, your Amazon Prime membership, your Freshie expenses to get delivery takeout, and whatever is left out at the end of the month is known as your savings. So for budgeting, there's one key step we need to talk about. From our definition earlier, a personal budget is a financial tool to track your expenses. Now with this, we want to make sure we're tracking everything. And by that, I mean literally every single expense. A lot of people tend to make the mistake of not tracking down the little simple stuff. So a Snickers bar maybe from the dollar store, or that coffee you buy from Starbucks. But there's a key here. If you keep on forgetting to track the little small stuff, they end up snowballing over a period of time, and the snowball effect leads to something greater than you may ever think. Along with expenses like coffee, it can be the same thing said for subscriptions. Things like your Netflix accounts or your Spotify accounts, your Prime Music, and Amazon Prime can all be said the same thing, where it's only $5 a month and people usually think it's just a cup of coffee, right? Well, the problem with that is the snowball effect continues on, that every month you're having all these extra subscriptions when really you may only need one or two. The good thing about the budget is that it will help you track where all your money is going and how many subscriptions you have, and you can figure out which ones are really of most value to you. Alright, so for budgeting resources, there are tons of tools and apps that you can use to help optimize your time when making a budget. For me personally, however, I choose to scrap all of that and use an Excel spreadsheet, type in my own values, and figure out how much I'm spending. There's nothing wrong with using the automated services. It's just for me personally, I'd highly suggest that if you have the time on your hands, do so. Because by putting in each individual expense, you'll be able to track it better and also understand what you're actually spending your money on. So as a tip for you guys, I'd recommend that you keep all your receipts. Now for this, you can always lose one or two receipts. It's not a big deal, but you can go to your online banking website and check it out. The reason why I suggest keeping this is that it will just make it easier for you to track your budgets if you decide not to do it for a day or two. Alright, with everything that we've talked about with a budget today, why should you even care to actually make a budget? After all, if you're not overspending compared to what you earn and you don't go into debt, there's no problem, right? Well, for making a budget, there are actually two reasons you want to consider why it's so important for you to make a budget. So the first reason you want to make a budget is so that you actually don't get into debt and don't overspend. You're going to be able to track all your expenses and make any adjustments on the fly necessary throughout the month if needed. So another reason you want to make sure you have a budget is so that you can see if you're actually meeting your lifestyle requirements, or if you're going to need to pick up an extra shift or two to get those Gucci slides you always wanted. This brings me to my next point. And no, we're not going to talk about those Gucci slides, even though really low-key, I do want to talk about them. It brings me to my next point of talking about planning for those big purchases like those Gucci slides. So picture this. The new iPhone 12 is coming out in about the next couple months, and it's going to be about $1,200 to pre-order. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know where the heck I'm going to be able to get that money from at one shot. That's basically like one paycheck, right? Well, here's the good thing about budgeting. I can pre-plan the expense so that every month I put away a little bit of money, and then by the time the iPhone 12 actually comes out, I'll have enough money to buy it off on day one. So now that we've talked about all the basics about making a budget, let's actually get into the nitty-gritty details of making it. There are lots of different strategies that you can use, but we're going to use a personal favorite, which is developed by Senior Elizabeth Warren, and it's called the 50-30-20 budget. Basically, 50% of your budget goes to necessities, and then 30% goes to your personal expenses, and the last 20 goes to your savings. So the necessities, like we talked about earlier, are things like your rent and your food, while your personal expenses are things like your Amazon Prime account, or those Starbucks macchiato coffees, for example, or tickets to the amusement park. Whereas the last 20% are your savings. Now these are different from the things like an iPhone 12 purchases. These are meant for your bigger life decisions, so funding your retirement account through an RRSP or a TFSA, which we can get through later, or buying an investment property and saving up for that, or finally going into the stock market and trying to look for the best values out there to make the most amount of returns. And we'll definitely get into those type of videos later on. But the key one thing to remember here is that you want to make sure you're taking your after-tax income. This is the money that you get after the government takes its cuts. Alright, so the key thing from this 50-30-20 budget is the fact that you want to be disciplined and every month take 20% of your after-tax income and put it in that savings account for the future. It will save you a lot of pain down the line and make sure that you are successful for the upcoming years. Alright guys, so as promised, we have two sheets here. First, I'm going to show you my mock budget, then we're finally going to go over the actual spending for the month. So, as an example here, we have someone earning about $3,000 before taxes. Their tax rate is about 20%, so they're going to have a take-home pay after the government takes their cut of about $2,400, which isn't too bad actually in my opinion. We also have expenses in this mock budget. So from here you can see we have rent, we have car insurance, we have your personal expenses, utilities, subscriptions, gas, groceries, your phone bill, cable and internet, miscellaneous, and your savings. Now for this, you may not be having all these expenses necessarily. For example, your subscriptions, you may not be having $50, but this is just what we projected to budget for the month. Yours may be different, and that's totally cool. Now you may be wondering for this, why is your savings negative $100? And in this case right now, in this example, the person's spending more than they're actually having for an income. So their total spendings are $2,500, meaning they have to take $100 out of their savings to be able to match their net income every month. Now that we've seen that, why don't we go on to the actual budget? Alright, so now that we've looked at the projection for our budget, why don't we take a look at what we actually took for our spending in the month of December. So as we can see here, we have our typical recurring expenses like our rent and our car insurance, as well as utilities, our Kudo payment for our cell phone plan, and our payment for cable and internet. We also have some other differences, so personal expenses like liquor store expenses. We want dinner out with the boys to go get some yummy cheese pizzas from the Hut. And we have a new expense called Christmas expense because, you know, we got to get those gifts for mom and dad. And finally, we have one expense for ourselves, which I like to call impulsive purchases. These are personal expenses as well, but they can be things like your guitar or camcorders, just random stuff that you might want to pick up for a hobby, but you may never end up doing. Alright, so now that we've looked at what we actually spent throughout the month, why don't we do an apples to apples comparison from our mock budget from what we thought we were going to spend to our actual spendings. So, we spent $800 in rent and nothing changed throughout that. Insurance was the exact same story of only a $200 spend. Our phone bill, it's a recurring payment, so we spent $50 for that. Our utilities were also $75 and nothing changed from that. And finally, we expect to spend $100 for our Shaw cable, so we did spend $100 since it's a monthly payment. So let's look at the differences in between our actual spending and what we thought we would spend. Subscriptions, for example, we thought we were only going to spend $50, but we added on a gym membership, and those 3 subscriptions really weren't that cheap, so it made it about $65. Now it's okay to have spent more in one category, but this means you really need to cut back in another category, especially if you don't want to blow away all your money and have some savings at the end of the month. We can see here the biggest change overall was going from personal expenses. We spent $345 when we thought it was going to be about $625 a month. This was because we're in a pandemic and there wasn't really anywhere to go out with friends, so we were able to save some money by staying home. A new expense that we added onto this month's budget was a gifts expense. And since it's Christmas time, we had to get some gifts for mom and dad, which is all cool. And again, this just means if you want to add another category, cut back somewhere else, which we did with personal. Groceries also was another major cutback. We thought we were going to spend $300, but it ended up only costing us $120. And a large reason for this was because we had leftovers from last month and we had a lot of extra groceries that we bought that were able to be stored in the freezer, and we used those. Gas was also a major cost saver. We were going to originally spend $150, but it only costed us $100 because we didn't have to go to the office as often. And that leads us to a total of $1,930, which is 80% of our net income. Looking at this, we have about $470 left over, which is about 20% of our net income. And if we compare the two of losing $100 a month to hold our expenses to now saving $470, this is a huge gain of about 24% and something we can work on for months and months to come to keep on increasing this savings portion. Now, although the 50-30-20 budget is well regarded by most personal finance advisors, I have maybe 1 or 2 adjustments that I try to make with it, and the majority of it has to do with the savings component. Although the 20% threshold is a great start, depending on your circumstance, I'd suggest trying to bump it up to 30 or 40%. You can start at 20, but raise it up to 25 and then 30 if you're young like me. If you're a little bit older, nothing wrong with that. Keep it at that 20%. It's all good. Now, there's 2 reasons why I'd suggest you should be doing this, and they're pretty easy right now. 1, we're currently in a pandemic, so there's nowhere to go. And 2, if you have a good enjoyment in the stock market like I do, and you enjoy saving and seeing your wealth grow, it makes it like a game to be able to save, and like a hobby, you can see over time your money start to grow, and it's really enjoyable in that aspect. So for planning for retirement and having all these savings, to make it a little bit easier on you, why not set a goal for what you want to do with all this money when you're done with? Do you want it so that you can sip some Mai Tais at the beach in Boca Raton? Or is it because you want to have multiple investment properties so when you retire you can have that sweet, sweet cash flow and never have to work in your life again? I'll let you in on a little secret. For me, the reason why I want to have all these savings is so that one day when I'm retired, I can be able to have access to the newest convertibles or also have multiple investment properties. The key for you is just to figure out what drives you, set your goals from there, and then having savings and saving every month will almost be like nothing for you. Alright, this brings us to the end of our video about how the budgeting system works. I hope I taught you a thing or 2 about how it works and how you can apply it to your life for financial management. If you liked the video, make sure to leave a like as well as a subscribe. And if you want any future videos, make sure to leave a comment down below. I'll be reading them and looking for suggestions for any future videos. Thanks, and stay fresh.